as of late, when WWE has decided to get extreme, they've got extreme. Now, this was not always the case, because of course you can go back to the Extreme Rules pay-per-view, which basically boiled down to just a marketing exercise, and because we did have that name, well, a bunch of fights just became extreme, even though they weren't extreme at all. That wasn't always the way, so hello, I am Simon Miller, and let's take an extreme path down memory lane, and hopefully I will stop saying the word extreme. When it comes to the WWE, here's some super extreme matches. Damn it! Number 10, Shane McMahon versus Kurt Angle at the 2001 King of the Ring. Now this one gets in the list, because I don't actually think it was meant to be as brutal as it turned out to be. But on this day, life went, oh, you're trying to toy with me? I will whoop your ass. Now, aside from laying in their strikes really stiff, because that's just the way that Shane McMahon worked and Kurt Angle wasn't going to respond in kind, it all came down to the moment when they decided to throw each other through some glass. This is infamous these days, and of course it was where the pay-per-view set was set up, and either one of two things happened. One, somebody was not told that the glass was meant to be fake glass and we had real glass, or two, somebody forgot. Neither of these options are good. Because yes, it did mean when Angle went to suplex Shane through this thing, he just whammed right into it and fell on his head. Now that would have been bad enough, but they did it over and over and over again. It was like that Simpsons meme, stop, he's already dead. Shane McMahon has admitted it was him that kept screaming, damn it, we're gonna go through that thing. But when they had done that, they then had to go the other way, and by the end of it, Kurt just grabs Shano and throws him through this stuff, and honestly, there is blood everywhere. The word is that Vince McMahon was even saying, man, we're gonna have to stop this soon, before they do get back to the ring, and Shane O'Mac gets Angle slammed from the top rope using a damn board. So you really do need to see this one for it to be believed. It went way too far. Number 9, TLC 2 from WrestleMania 17. So we are sort of toying with the idea of what we believe extreme to be. But if you weren't able to travel back to 2001 and see TLC 2 at WrestleMania 17 for the first time, well, that's what you would walk away saying to your friends. Love me sideways, that was extreme. It also saw Edge and Christian, the Dudleys and the Hardys take this stipulation and rise it to such absurd levels that you could probably make the argument that it's never actually been topped. It also made the whole idea famous forever, and of course, we all remember the spear that Edge gave Jeff Hardy when he was dangling from the ceiling. But don't forget, Jeff also climbed up to the tallest ladder ever and did a crazy dive. I don't understand how that man is still walking. You also get people being whammed by chairs going through more tables, and ladders just going into people's eye sockets, and honestly, every single person in this gives you everything they have. Even when Edge and Christian win, they do it with debris everywhere, and even though this was 24 years ago, people still talk about it. I think ultimately that sums it up. Number 8, Mick Foley versus Edge at WrestleMania 22. Fire within the WWE is rare. Obviously the thing that most of us think of is when we had the Inferno match in 1998 between Kane and the Undertaker. But even then, this was kind of done as professionally as we could. Because even when the Big Red Machine's arm was set alight and he was waving it around everywhere, he went backstage straight away so the fire could be put out. And yes, he was also wearing like a sleeve that was fire resistant. I'm not saying it wasn't dangerous, but actually when you do wrap it up into a nice little package, this was very professionally done. Because after Ilia had set the table on fire, Edge gave Mick Foley a spear off the ring apron, and for a good few seconds, these two guys were just on fire. I mean, go and look at their facial expressions for all the proof of that, and do not forget again, before this we had tables and we had chairs and we had thumbtacks. And this was just Mick Foley doing what Mick Foley always did. He was like, oh hey, Rated R superstar, ironically, I see you need some more Edge. Well, I'm the guy that's gonna give it to you. And honestly, when Edge was walking away, we were all like, yep, that's a brand new big time star. Once again though, I'm pretty sure he is in shock, because just to double down on it, he got set on fire. This whole match is wild. Number 7, Goldust versus Roddy Piper from WrestleMania 12. So this one is a random pick, but I just think it's a fight that does not get talked about enough. Now it was a backlot brawl, meaning that it was kind of shot like a cinematic match, but that just meant we could take more liberties than usual, while these two also took lumps out of each other. I mean, at one point, Roddy Piper hits Goldust so hard with a bat, and again, maybe this is camera trickery, but it still gets me, and Goldust gets instant revenge, because he gets in his car and he runs over the rowdy one. The pair then ate the O.J. Simpson Bronco footage, which I guess is very of its time. When eventually they do scrap back to the arena, you can go and see this for yourself. I'm pretty sure they are just punching each other in the face. There's also blood everywhere and their clothes are ripped, and given the time of frame this did go down, well, I would be surprised if they worked this A lot of it was probably pretty real. No, it does end bizarrely because Piper wins after basically stripping Goldust down, and why wouldn't you do that? But I suppose to understand this one is to go and actually watch it. If nothing else though, the WWF wasn't doing anything like this back in the 90s, especially not at WrestleMania. This really did stand out like a sore thumb. Number 6, Walter versus Ilia Dragunov from NXT UK in October 2020. Extreme doesn't always mean weapons. Once again, I would dare you to sit somebody down and show them the future Gunther taking on Ilia Dragunov at this NXT UK show and say, hey man, do you think this is an actual fight? They'll probably go, yes, I do. It really is just like watching someone be killed, and of course this came during the pandemic era. Because the WWE was searching for anything creative, I suppose they sat these two down and said, how about you do a match like you would do on the indie scene? And they did do that, and honestly, some of these chops Walter gives Ilia, I mean, they're quite frankly disgusting. It really does get uncomfortable after a while, but that's almost the beauty of the thing. Because even though Walter keeps pummeling this guy, Dragonov just won't quit. And by the end of it, good grief, you never supported anyone more in your whole life. It almost becomes like a car wreck towards the finish because Ilia has been beaten so badly. But this is actually one of the pandemic matches you can go back and check out because they almost use the silence to their advantages. Every single strike, it just makes you feel EBGB. So I really do think in terms of what you would see out on the street, this is as close as you're ever going to get to in a WWE ring. And I bet it helped them get to the main roster. This is something else. Number 5, Brock Lesnar versus John Cena at Extreme Rules 2012. So this match was stupid because WWE did have John Cena win, even though Brock Lesnar had only just returned, but we had to punish him for something he did like 10 years ago. Wrestling is dumb. Just forget all that though and move it to one side, because in terms of this match, it is crazy violent. Now, in many ways, it was similar to our last entry in the sense that everybody agreed that Brock Lesnar had to come across like the former UFC champion, but that would mean he would have to maul John Cena. That's what he does. I mean, Cena gets beaten up so badly, he is just bleeding all over the place. And don't forget, this was 2012. Nobody whooped John that bad in 2012, so your eyes were just as big as a peach. As we become a Brock stable as well, nothing looked fake during this. And the AA that he takes to finish the thing on Simba the Still Steps, well, I'm amazed he didn't break his back. The noise is totally horrible, and do not forget they did run this back at SummerSlam 2014, and that's the night when Brock Lesnar just decimated John Cena, and that's kind of extreme too, but in a totally different way. So if you do watch these back to back, or you could probably call it next level punishment. Number 4, Randy Orton versus Cactus Jack at Backlash 2004. So we did mention this earlier, it's just what Mick Foley did. He was the star maker. Now, it was his idea to work with Randy Orton at this time because we were in that sort of trouble again. WWE were trying to push Orton as a top guy, but he too lacked some edge. Unlike some of the other matches we have talked about as well, the first half of this, or maybe the first 75%, is just Randy getting totally bludgeoned. Once again, there's chairs and barbed wires and all kinds of weaponry, and this man is bleeding. Also, for the first time, it made us all go, oh man, I think Orton may be a little bit dangerous. That's because towards the end of this, he totally understands the assignment and he just unleashes a wild rage of violent fury, including taking Cactus Jack and RKOing him on a barbed wire bat. He also does this with pins sticking out of his ass because it was Randy that had been thrown into the thumbtacks, but honestly, that moment will stay with him forever. It really was the turning point. Orton also sells all of this wonderfully after the fact, and seriously, when he was walking up that aisle, every single person in that arena and around the world was like, well, he's a future world champion. Case closed. Number 3, Eddie Guerrero versus JBL at Judgment Day 2004. So this is a very interesting entry, because even if beforehand you have planned to get down and dirty, well, it goes back to what we said earlier, sometimes life just takes over. Because after a death chair shot, thanks to JBL, Eddie Guerrero does indeed decide, I am going to do that time-old tradition, and he blades himself in order to bleed. As you can imagine though, there is no science to that. It's not like, well, I hold it at a 45-degree angle and I'll put it here on my head. You kind of just do it. And I don't know whether Guerrero's adrenaline was too high, but oh my gosh, he goes way too deep. And the red stuff that was pouring out of his skull, I mean, I've said it once, I'll say it 100 times, it was absolutely disgusting, and it kind of looked like pulp. Eddie, in fact, lost so much blood that when he did get backstage, he collapsed and needed medical attention. And honestly, if you've never seen this, I would approach with a warning. It gets very gnarly, very fast. And of course, blood done right in wrestling can heighten emotions. We've talked about that 1,000 times. But there's also a line, and maybe here we just crossed it a little bit. Now I suppose it did help in the sense that Bradshaw had a brand new character and he needed to be taken seriously. And yeah, this was Exhibit A. It looked like he tried to murder Eddie Guerrero. It's really not fun to watch after a while though, because Eddie does look completely distressed. So honestly, if you're squeamish and things get you in your tum-tum, just avoid it forever. It's not worth it. Number 2, Mankind versus The Rock from the 1999 Royal Rumble. So this was another one where life decided to take over because the Mankind and The Rock had agreed, while you are handcuffed Mick Foley, I am going to give you a few unprotected chair shots to the head. By the end of this match, somehow that number had got to 11. Now once again, Mick Foley did have his hands cuffed behind his back during this, which made it even more sickening, and his family were in the front row. And you can see all of this on the Beyond the Mat documentary. They were so distressed, well, they get up and leave. It also caused some legitimate beef between Mick Foley and The Rock for a while, because it did kind of feel like he was taking liberties. Listen, there is an element of truth to that. When you do get into double figures, well, it's a bit like, well, how don't we stop? Now there is an upside once again when you look past all of that, because Mick Foley walked away as the most sympathetic babyface ever, and in terms of The Rock, well yeah, all of a sudden his character was totally flubbed up. I mean, you could argue that the Great One never looked more brutal than he did on this night. The truth of the matter is, well, it was all just a little bit real, and therefore just a little bit too extreme. Number 1, Mankind versus The Undertaker at the 98 King of the Ring. So a boring number 1 for sure, and I bet you expected it, but there's a reason people still talk about this all the time, and there's a reason it is one of the most famous matches in WWE history, and I actually think because of that we forget the context. Because for one, Mick Foley was thrown off the top of the Hell in a Cell, and he crashed through a table. Go back and rewatch this footage today. He is so close to hitting that steel guardrail, so I don't want to be an over-the-top olive, but he could have died. I mean, it's totally insane that he was allowed to do this to begin with, but even Mick Foley has said, screw that one. It's the second one where I was like, oh no, I've done it. Because him and The Undertaker were always going to do some choke slams at the top of the cage, but they assumed that the mesh on top would kind of sink a little bit, but nope, after the first one, it gives way, and poor Foley, man, he hits that mat. And again, watch the officials that run into the ring. They are really, really worried. His head also snaps in the most grotesque way. And listen to The Undertaker's words. He said it too. Oh no, I think I've killed him. Mick has also gone on record to say that thank goodness he didn't jump as high as he usually does for that choke slam. Because even if he had been a few feet in the air, well yeah, who knows what would have happened after that landing. What really sums this up best is that it did go down in 1998. And I'll be the first one to say it. I don't actually think it's ever been topped. It was just too crazy and too damn risky, and it's not like other people haven't tried. In fact, this is responsible for some wrestlers going way too off the ball, but you can't beat the first one, man. And honestly, I don't use that word a lot, but it was really, really insane.